You don't need another app or another stock plan. You need a coach who sees and hears you. Hi, everyone. I'm Elaina Raponi, a 246 marathoner, run coach, and mental performance coach. I'm also the other face behind Fast and Free Performance Coaching. And today I'm hopping on the microphone for the very first time to interview Brant. For those of you who don't already know, Brant is a registered psychotherapist, a former professional triathlete, and a former national team coach who's helped countless runners achieve their goals, from first-time runners to Boston Marathon and Olympic trials qualifiers. He also happens to be my coach. In this episode, we break down why mentorship matters more than metrics and how having a coach can help athletes avoid some of the most common pitfalls we see in running. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. This is kind of weird.
Yeah, it's odd. You're downstairs and I'm upstairs.
Yeah, but also this is my first time hosting the podcast. I feel like I've been more behind the scenes, so you've been the face of this, and yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, well, hey, it'll be good to have you. I think you'll do better at this part than I do. So I'm excited to be on this end of it here. So let's see how you do, but I think it'll be good. Don't worry.
All right. Well, obviously, I have listened to every episode that you've recorded. You've picked some really good guests, but it's nice to have you in the hot seat. And obviously, there's 1,000 things that we could talk about, 1,000 different directions this conversation could go. So when I was preparing for this, I'm like, what's a different angle? What's a different topic that we can touch upon? And we already said it's probably going to take a couple tangents. But I really was thinking about the role of mentors in coaching and what that looks like. But I guess just to set the stage, what drew you to coaching in the first place?
I actually didn't want to do it. I don't even know if you know this. I didn't want to coach. I was kind of doing a little bit in college when I was there at Humber. And then I remember graduating from my kin degree, and Steve, who's like my longtime coach and mentor, I'm sure we'll talk about, was like, "Hey, I need a sprint coach." I was like, "I don't coach sprints. Screw that. I hate sprints. I don't know anything about it." He's like, "Yeah, but you got a kin background." I was like, "I don't want to do it." And so he had another guy that he coached that fall who was like on a gap year, just taking some time off school. So I came in as like the second assistant kind of thing. And then when that guy went back to school, I kind of just took on. So that was 2012. So I actually like didn't even want to coach, which is odd now to think about it. Sorry, I wanted to go to PT school actually, and I got into it. It was a cool first year. Learned a heck of a lot. Learned a lot of what not to do, I suppose. And then it kind of just went from there. We like first couple years, it was like year to year, like coming back, doing this kind of thing. Wasn't doing much, more a lot of watching and stuff. And then yeah, slowly it kind of grew, and I'm sure we can talk about that, like what that Queen's program was like and such. But yeah, no, I didn't want to coach before. I was doing a little bit, like just to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy in Toronto who I still chat with from time to time, who's an amazing, friend and coach, Kevin Smith, who runs Marathon Dynamics. And so if you've been in the Canadian race, you see all the purple everywhere. And when I was in undergrad, I actually coached with him. I was making like $25 an hour going out and coaching track sessions for like adults and stuff. So it helped like kind of pay the bills for school. But he was amazing. Like he was so gracious and showed me everything, and, brought me out to group runs and let me, help out in time. And so that was like kind of my first real, like insight into like adult coaching and stuff. And so I always remember Kevin, and, I still cheer for him at races because he's crushing it with like masters records and stuff right now. And,
Yeah.
He was a big fan of trying to help me support in college. So that's kind of what got me into it. And then, when I started working with Steve, it kind of just blew up from there. Yeah.
So you've mentioned two different names, Steve Boyd, for those of our listeners who don't know, and Kevin Smith. So two different mentors. Did you find that they had different coaching styles, or what did you pick up from each of those two mentors?
Yeah. So I'd say those are certainly early mentors. I had a few along the way that were also amazing, but both of them were like very gracious in giving and showing. And I think that was something that was really interesting to me at that point, because as an athlete, like we were all kind of like closed, like this is what we do, and we're trying to get this competitive edge and such, right? And then meeting Kevin, he was like, here's everything we do, here's the marathon plans, here's the workouts, here's everything, right? And Steve was the same way. And so I felt very lucky that I had these two people who had done it, both of them chasing their own high and aspirational dreams, both have masters records, both, trying to make teams, and Boyd making teams. And coaching plenty of adults to success as well. And they were just like, here's everything we know. And I was like, wow, that's like amazing, actually. So I was very fortunate that way. So I think the graciousness and the giving that they had, like, still, that's kind of become a core principle of mine. And, we talk about this later if you would like, but like coaching trees are a thing. And, both Steve and Kevin have very big coaching trees that I'm very fortunate to be a part of. And, now I'm starting to develop a coaching tree, which is really important to me to be able to give back. And so just watching those guys, like the care they had for the sport. And I remember Steve said this years ago when I first started taking coaching seriously. He's like, the goal of every coach should be to leave the sport in a better place than when they found it. And so that's really something I try to do all the time. And so I would say those two things. And then also their just like unwavering dedication to their athletes was something that was really inspiring. Like, it didn't matter if you were a 6-hour marathoner or a guy trying to make the Olympic team. It was the same effort and energy and applause and, dedication to them. And I thought that was really inspiring. Like, I was this like, half-assed so college kid trying to be really good and never made it. But like, it didn't matter that there was guys minutes ahead of me in the 5K. They gave me the time and energy. And I watched them do that, through their careers and their practices. And it's something I've really tried to take on now.
Yeah. So something you mentioned is kind of like this transparency about like, here's our program, here's what we're doing. I don't think that's always the case with different coaches and how they approach sharing workouts, sharing materials. So maybe you can touch a little bit more about that and like that transparency of sharing workouts, sharing programs, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an ethos in running. Like, for like if we use the term like running purists, like that's how the sport was passed down, right? Like, if you think back to like Lydiard days and what he did, and he then, after he did it in New Zealand, came to North America and shared it. And then, Daniels did all the testing and then wrote the book and shared it and was like, here's the plans, here's what we do. And I think over the years, you've seen coaches go and teach at symposiums and such. And I've been fortunate to do a little bit of that in a former role, not nearly, towards the heavyweight names that I just mentioned. But I think when you look at people who care about the sport, that's the way we want it to be. Like, I want people to know what we're doing. I want to share that information because if a runner out there has more information to make more informed choices in their pursuit of whatever excellence is to them, I think that's important. I think it's also the only way we learn, right? If you look at academia, we don't just do studies and then keep them to ourselves, right? We put it out and we do peer review and we share it openly, right? And I think that's how everything gets better. And I think that's what we should do in coaching. But you're right. It's not the way it goes all the time, unfortunately. And I think generally, like, I think if you're hiding something, there's probably a little bit of like insecurity. And, I would give a caveat to that, I suppose. Like, at the senior national team level, when you're like competing with other people for spots, I can understand it a bit. I don't think that's the practice as much anymore. I think there was some secrecy with some of the bigger groups in the 2000s and such. But, if you look at North America now, like, especially with Strava, like, most people aren't hiding their stuff. It's all up there, right? Yeah. And so, the second piece I'd say to that is, we sometimes do a bad job in the sport and be like, oh, X runner ran X time and did this build, therefore I'll do X build and try to run X time. And I think that's the double-edged sword of sharing, right? Is like, it's great that it's all out there and we can learn from it, but oftentimes it gets misapplied because the workouts and the mileage and everything are very dependent to the athlete, not just like copy and paste. And I remember running up against this, like when I was coaching in the high schools, there was these teachers, like, love them. They were putting in all the time. They were doing everything for the kids, and they would just, like, bless their heart, they didn't, have a big background or anything. They just read like Runner's World or Canadian Running or something and pull a workout and give it to the kids and such. And, I applaud them for their effort, but sometimes that can get misapplied when we share the right way. And I think as coaches and, even elite athletes, we should probably provide better context when we're sharing, maybe would be the antidote. But yeah, I think it's a key process for how the sport evolves. Like, I think we're all only going to get better in the sport if we keep sharing knowledge. And I think I guess it'd be a side tangent, but which I'm sure there'll be plenty because I'm bad at that. But I think that's one real cool thing coming out of the trail side right now of running is like everybody on the trail side, at least that I've seen, seems very, very open to sharing knowledge and practices and such. And so I think they're kind of leading the way in that compared to the road and track scene, but it's really cool to watch. So yeah, I don't know, sum it up. We should all share our stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously the running landscape looks probably a little different in 2025 than maybe when you first got into it. So, how, and maybe it hasn't, maybe it has, but has your coaching philosophy changed or evolved over time?
It's a tough one. I would say the core tenets have stayed the same. Like you're serving athletes. You're trying to help them chase their goals. Sometimes it's you're trying to help them chase goals that they never thought were possible for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pump their tires and be a cheerleader. So I would say like the central tenets haven't changed. I would still say I very much come at it from like a Daniels based perspective where it's like you got to do a lot of easy volume and then tempo running and
Mm-hmm.
then everything else kind of filters in around there, and different blocks throughout the year. So I would say all that stuff has changed. Like maybe your question was like, are there things that I have changed in particular, like on the coaching side?
I mean, like, not necessarily like, I'm not talking about, how like workouts or
Yeah,
training methodologies maybe have changed, like double tempos and all like the
yeah.
fancy newer stuff. But I guess just your tenet of how you approach working with your athletes and how you coach them. I guess that's what I was more getting at, if that has changed at all.
Yeah, no, not really. Like, I still think it's still like person first, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very fortunate to coach a wide spectrum of athletes and still have, a little bit of a hand in the high performance world. And it
Mm-hmm.
is still the same. Like, my HP people still have problems in their lives that we need to solve and work around the same way, what I affectionately call my marathon moms who are getting up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. at some ungodly hour to train still have problems, right? And so, the central piece is always people first, and so that really
Mm-hmm.
hasn't changed. But I think I've probably gained a bigger understanding of people and runners as a whole by coaching outside of the high performance world than I
Mm-hmm.
did inside the high performance world, where things are very number focused and outcome focused almost to a fault sometimes, and that pendulum
Mm-hmm.
has shifted, I would say, across my kind of almost 15 years in that world. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's still the same. It's like people first. I know you've heard me say this all the time, in your coaching development, hear me talking to athletes, but it's like I don't coach a spreadsheet for an X time. I coach the person to help them develop. So I think
Yeah.
that's really kind of where it's at. But like I said, I've shifted, some of my views on people and probably understood them a little bit better now since I've been doing it for a while. But I think,
Yeah.
going back to the mentor piece, I was very fortunate to have people put me on the right path right away.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of demystified what this is all about. And I think back and I go, man, I'm so lucky because I know what my tendencies would have been had I not had these people, that I would have been chasing times and all these things. And so it truly is a testament to the people who helped kind of build me up.
Yeah. So you've mentioned it a couple times, like people first. So, as someone who has not only been coaching for a very long time, but as someone who has also coached at a very high level, what are some of your general thoughts on like AI generated apps or, stock training plans and that sort of thing, which we are seeing more and more of in today's day and age?
Yeah, I mean, I'll preface this by saying like I use AI for stuff for sure. I mean, like
Mhm.
Riverside that we are hosting this platform on uses Riverside, right? Like, or AI rather. And I have no uh, gripes with AI. Like, I think it's going to, adapt or die, I suppose, in some respects. But um, I think the hardest part with AI, and I've seen this, and I know you've seen this in your coaching practice and talking to other coaches, is
Mhm.
that it really, as best as it tries to understand the person, it doesn't. And so I
Mhm.
think, I see the mistakes all the time of like stacking things. You put in, oh, here's the days I can run and how much volume and all that stuff, right? And it's just like, boom, there you go, right? But it doesn't really look at like rest recovery cycles and how an athlete actually recovers. The
Mhm.
example I always use all the time is like AI doesn't know that your 2-year-old was up all night screaming and puking all over you and you had to miss that run and now you got to go like put it in somewhere else in the week, right? So
Mhm.
I think I put it akin to like stock training plans. Like I think it's an okay avenue for people to start in the support, I suppose,
Mhm.
and maybe get a bit, but I think there's a reason why, like, this is maybe a bad example and I don't want to take it this way all the time, but my litmus test is like, is an elite athlete doing this? And I'm not saying like everybody has to do what elite athletes are doing, but
Mhm.
if we think about it this way, and you can think about it in other sports domains too, right? It's like if there's athletes and there are professional athletes making half a million dollars a year in sponsorships and bonuses and everything, right? If they wouldn't do this and the shoe companies that are going after world records and such have all the money
Mhm.
in the world, they're not hiring X new app with a venture capitalist $20 billion fund to create running plan to work with the Grant Fishers and Nico Youngs and, everybody else that you can think of who's trying to win medals. There's probably not something to it, right? Like, yes, data is the way of the world. Professional sports are using data more and more. And I'm not against data. I think it should inform a lot of things that we do. But I think when it comes down to what it is an athlete is trying to do, nothing will beat an actual experienced coach who's been there and done it and seen it until they end up having like massive amounts of large language model qualitative input and output, because that's really where coaches shine. And even then, like workouts, at the end of the day, we're all just trying to do the same question, like make the physiology better, right? But it's the blend of it. And most of the plans I've seen, like from athletes who have signed on coming from apps, I don't want to like get banned and say their names, so I won't, but I don't think I'm big enough to get banned. But, you know, they don't, the workouts aren't bad. It's the flow of where they're at and where that athlete actually
Mm-hmm.
is. I think the last piece I would say on that is these stock plans and apps look at like a single build or a single race goal and not
Mm-hmm.
for longevity and keeping people in sport. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a major downside when people are looking at like getting into running and then all of a sudden they go and they get injured and they go, oh, I guess I'm not a runner. And it's like, no, well, you are a runner. It's just your plan was crap,
Yeah.
and it injured you, or you didn't have the feedback to back off like that a coach would have given you to prevent that injury. And so I think that's one of the major downsides I'm seeing.
Yeah. And, obviously, as you mentioned, like I have my own coaching practice. And when I'm starting to work with a new runner, they're sharing their goals. I want to qualify for Boston. I want to run this time in the marathon, the 10K, whatever it is. And, obviously, I can't guarantee those results. If I could, I'm sure I'd be a lot richer than I am.
Yeah.
But I definitely take that long term approach as well. And especially with a distance like the marathon, I share with athletes, it's like, do I want to do everything I can to try to get you that goal? Yes. Will it maybe happen in the first go at it? Maybe, maybe not. So I do try to take that long term approach. And, sometimes it means if I'm not a good fit with an athlete because they're like, nope, this is a one and done. It's like, I'm not willing to risk your health or happiness or longevity in the sport by, throwing things at the wall and you potentially getting injured. Right. And so, I just wanted to highlight that because I do think that, again, I've seen it before. I've had athletes that have come to me after working with apps and had injuries and all that sort of thing. And it's just sometimes ramping up too quick, not enough balance between like intensity and easy volume and that sort of thing. But, it could be an entryway for athletes or someone just picking up running that maybe doesn't have the means to hire a one-on-one coach or whatever, right? So pros and cons, but definitely have seen a lot of the things that you shared there.
Yeah, I'll add one thing to it. I remember I was coaching at Queens. Steve said this. I don't remember the question that prefaced it, and it's always stuck with me. There's no plan to run X time. There's just a
Mhm.
plan to get better, right? So,
Yeah.
your ego and your thoughts and your goals can say, "Ah, I want to run 3 hours or 2X, whatever, or 4X, whatever," right? There's no
Hmm.
plan that makes you run 3 hours or 4X, right? There's a plan that gets you better slowly day by
Yeah.
day. And so you can think of the flip side of that. It's like, well, your goal might actually not be hard enough. You might actually be better than that goal. So maybe you're selling yourself short by setting that as the benchmark, right? And so
Hmm.
the whole idea isn't, obviously, like we're going to be working towards something. We're going to look at current fitness and what's realistic, et cetera, right? But the goal is just to get you better. The time, like race times are a lagging indicator of good training behaviors over months, right? And
Hmm.
so I tell everyone, I can't guarantee you're going to run X time, but I can guarantee you get better if you do this, right?
Yeah.
And we'll see how good you can get. Otherwise, I always extend examples up to the absurd because it points out like the fallacies in it, right? So it's like if there was a
Hmm.
plan to run X, then why doesn't everybody just do the exact training plan Kipchoge did to break two? Because then if
Hmm.
they did that at the exact same paces and did all that, right, then everybody would run sub two. It's like, well,
Hmm.
no, obviously we wouldn't do that, right? So we can't just extend that down to age groupers and such. Be like, oh, okay, well, you know, I'll look at another example I use all the time is yours and mine's PRs are separated by about 7 seconds, I want to say. Yours is faster, but you ran Chicago and I ran a slow course. But I'm not mad about it. But you averaged probably about 105 to 110 miles in that build a week. I averaged about 30 miles a week in that build, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if you wanted to ask me, okay, what's the plan to run 246? I was like, I don't know. I have literally 2 of them in my household. So I don't know. You pick one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd bet on yours over mine for sure, right? But it doesn't invalidate or mean that I didn't train enough for doing it. I trained to what my body would allow, right?
Yeah.
And so I think when you extend those examples out to the absurd or like an actual literal proof point like that, it's a lot easier to understand that really we're just thinking from an ego and drive perspective. And I don't mean ego in the negative sense, like you egotistical, ass or something, but I just mean like all of us have egos in terms of what we're chasing. And when that leads, we tend to overdo it and fail.
This is, I guess, maybe less on like the mentorship side, but like the coaching side. And this has just been going through my brain a lot the last couple of weeks because I'm actually in the midst of writing a little blog post about it. But it's kind of differentiating between like talent and hard work, and how we approach that or how we see that in our coaching practice. And you don't have to like talk about my experience, like in full disclosure, you are my running coach for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm sure most people listening do know that. But it's something I'm writing about because I, didn't run in high school, didn't run in college, but like you give me a plan and I will execute it to the best of my ability. And I'm just wondering how that shows up in your coaching practice. It doesn't have to be me, it can be any other athlete, but what that kind of looks like for you from a coaching hat.
Yeah, it's funny. As soon as you said that, I thought of this saying that the group at Queens had that I think is super funny because I'm a nerd. But it was the guys in particular, and they grouped themselves into the all work, no talent, or all talent, no work. And I thought that was really like clever at the time. This was in the mid 2010s, and it was funny because there was one guy in particular, like ridiculously talented and worked very hard, but it came easier for him than it did, other guys. And so I think it's an interesting lens to fit into like how you look at training and people. It's like there are people who are very talented and there are people who work very hard, right? And so what you really want is like if I had to break down like the perfect athlete, and this is essentially what like most pros are that are like at the top of their game, is they are high talent, high work, and high responder. Because a lot of high talent people can be low responders or low work, and a lot of hard work people can be low talent and low responders. That's like the worst category, unfortunately. It's like you want to work really hard, but you have like zero talent. When I say talent, I mean like raw natural ability and physiology,
Right.
and you don't want to work. It's like I don't know what to do for you, unfortunately, right? But I think it's an interesting way to look at it, and I think everybody can work harder, right? Like it's always possible to work harder. It's just like it's a trade-off, right? In terms of what you're trading off, right? So like I am fortunate to coach so many athletes and that tell me they have to be done X run by X time, otherwise their partner is going to like crush them for being out too long, right? And so for them it's a trade-off away from family time, right? But the positive sides is probably they have improved mental health, better confidence, they're chasing goals. I think chasing goals is always important of like being in a healthy place. And you have to look at the trade-off. Like you made lots of trade-offs in your Berlin build, right? Like we talked about, unfortunately, like not seeing our nieces and nephews in the last month because it was back to school and getting sick and stuff, right? And we love those kids, right? And so if you are willing to work harder, chances are you will get better. Caveat, the work has to be smart because anybody can just work really hard for 2 or 3 weeks and then implode themselves. And I see that with a lot of age groupers and a lot of people that are kind of new with the run scene stuff, I would say, like run club scene stuff, where it's all hard stuff all the time. And it's like they do really well for like a couple weeks or maybe one build and then they just like crack, right? So it's like you can work harder, but you have to work smarter in our sport.
We kind of got off this topic a little bit, but when we were talking about like apps and training plans and stuff, I wanted to ask you what you think the role of like coaching certification courses are in shaping or developing coaches, and how important do you think, I guess a 2-part question, how important do you think mentorship is compared to formal education or certifications in shaping and developing a coach?
That's a good question. I'm glad I'm not part of
It's
that.
loaded. Yeah, it's
Uh,
loaded.
glad I'm not part of that world anymore. But I'll put it to like kind of conflicts of interest, I suppose. So I used to be the coaching education coordinator for Athletics Ontario, and I did do some work with Athletics Canada on that front. And I have done
Hmm.
a coaching education certification course that's supposed to be coming out later this year or next year on eating disorders for coaches. And so
That's with USCA, right?
with USCA, yeah. And
Yep.
so I want to preface that by saying I'm not in totality against coaching education, but I
Hmm.
think, and I pushed for this when I was working with the Canadian scene. Um, Coaching certification is broadly, I'm trying to be really nice here, is broadly not helpful if there's not mentorship.
Hmm.
I think, I'll explain a couple reasons. One, most elite athletes who come, they don't get coaching certifications, and I don't blame them. They have
Hmm.
marketability, they have a product, they know who they are, et cetera, right? But the
Yeah.
problem with elite athletes, and this isn't me saying it because I'm jealous of not being an elite athlete or anything like that. We've seen this time and time again. Is they look at the world through their lens of what made them good, and it takes a
Hmm.
really introspective and reflective athlete to understand that their view is broadly different than most people, and so that they have to train differently, right? And
Yeah.
so there would be that part on the elite side. On the like regular Joe side, let's say like you, right? Like you ran, sub elite, pretty competitive, but never coached, never thought about it, never did certifications or anything, right? It's like,
Hmm.
well, you could just pick up coaching. Anybody can literally pick up coaching and do
Hmm.
it, right? But if you don't have mentorship, whether you did a coaching certification or not, then
Hmm.
like I would look at it this way: you can probably get some random certification that says that you understand like biotechnology sciences. Like I'm sure it exists out there, right? But if you do a doctorate in it where you're mentored under the best like PhDs and supervisors in the country or in your school, you're probably going to be better at it, right?
Hmm.
And I know it's really blunt, but it's my honest opinion. And so I think like I used to half joke, like I was very fortunate to be mentored by Steve and some other coaches, for about 10, 11 years before I moved on from Queens. And
Hmm.
I said to Steele, it was like I did a PhD. Like I sat there for a couple years. I watched everything. I read everything. I did everything, right? And then
Hmm.
eventually he gave me some athletes to work with, right? And I was like, okay, cool. Then now I'm starting to do the application, right? This is my, experiment per se, right? And then I was like, okay, well, why don't you coach the junior group? Then I coached junior group. Then I had a couple high performance people, and then I had a couple people post collegiates, and then there was people within the Queens group that I was coaching, and it was like,
Hmm.
okay, well, there's your doctorate. You just spent 4 years doing that, and then you did a bunch of applied research, and then you got some results, and then you presented it over and over again as you had proof to do it, right? And so
Hmm.
I'm not the coach I am today if I would have just done a certification and done a bunch of marketing to say, hey, guess what? I have a certification. And I want to be clear, again, not bashing certification. I think it's a great entry point
Yeah.
for people. But if you're not mentored and mentored by like great people who are willing to share, you will not be as good a coach as you can be. And I think just as we have athletes who want to be as good as they can be, then our athletes are owed it by the coaches to be as good as they can be as coaches. And so that's where I think mentorship plays a role. I think also like even if you just want to be a really good coach, it's like, well, I want to be a really good coach. It's like, okay, well then I should probably learn from the best so I can be a really good coach like them. And I can tell you, like, I would still not know half the stuff I know today, 15 years in, if it wasn't by being mentored and like going
Yeah.
around. And I've mentioned Steve and Kevin, and I was very lucky that John LaFranco at Athletics Canada helped me, Laurier Primo at UBC, and I got to tour around and meet some of the best coaches in the world
Yeah.
at what they do, and like be able to learn and see what sticks across groups and nations and high performers and age groups and all these things. And so it's like if you don't have mentors, like you get access to none of that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I remember a couple years ago when you, as my coach and as my mentor, had really encouraged me to get into coaching. And you were like, I think you would relate to a certain demographic, as someone that didn't have the talent side of things, didn't run growing up, but had like I think of it again, like nature versus nurture. Like I have the work ethic, I have the hard work. And not to throw you under the bus, but you're like, you don't really need to do a coaching certification course. Like you have lived it, you've had a mentor, like you've done the work, like you're in the arena kind of thing. And I was like, no, 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 no. Like I have to do certification, be like for my own, like, I don't know, sanity or well-being or just confidence and having that like not competence. So I did my certification and spoiler alert, and again, sorry, I didn't find it all that helpful. because I had lived it. I had trained for many years. I had you as a mentor, and because you were mentored by Steve, it's like this trickle down effect of seeing, as you said, what sticks across different age groups, different talent levels, different abilities, etc. So I mean, I'm glad I did it to like, hey, I have some credibility behind me, but it's not something I think about every week when I'm writing my training plans for my athletes. So that was kind of a loaded question because I know we, like, again, it's seeing it from both lenses, but, and it's really nice. Like, yes, we are fortunate to live in the same household. So if I have a training question, even however many years into my own coaching practice, it's like I'm asking you, like, we share ideas, we bounce workouts off one another. And so I think that, yeah, that mentorship piece is really just like critical. Like, yeah.
Again, I'll extend the argument. Like, you look at I don't know the certification status of any of these people, but I don't think Jerry Schumacher coaching BTC or Mike coaching Grant or Mike Smith coaching Nico Young and now the Nike group is like, oh, he got hired because he did his USATF level 3, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, he got hired because he's freaking good at his job, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I just think I had this conversation years ago when I was doing it, and it was like the generation before us never needed certifications and became really good, right? And now it's kind of like the cost of entry, I would say. It's like a social proof point, but it doesn't mean you're actually good at your job. So, yeah, I know. I don't know. That's probably one of my harsher takes, I suppose. So you pulled that one out.
Don't.
Good job. But I don't know.
Sorry.
See what happens.
No, and something you said earlier in the call is like coaching the person and coaching the athlete, like not necessarily here is the one build, the one workout, the one plan to get this time. It's like there's no one perfect workout. It's how is it applied to the person in a larger context. And so, yeah, I know like we loosely talked about it earlier, but I was wondering if you had any like expanded thoughts on that. And like, again, I know you're a very high touch coach. Like you have a lot of communication with your athletes because again, so many of both of our athletes, like they are not elites, they are not professionals, they are not the people that like this is the only thing they do every single day. Like they have jobs and families and other life stressors that need to be taken into account of. And I was chatting with one of my athletes the other day. They were leading up to their marathon. I'm getting a text 4 or 5 days out. I'm not fit. I'm not ready. I can't do this. This isn't going to go well. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, calm down. I want you to scroll back through your Strava from the last 12 weeks. Like, there is your evidence. There is your proof, right? Being able to like talk athletes off the ledge, like, reaffirm that they've put in the work, that, they're ready to execute their race plan. And again, just to obviously not to pull the conversation back, but it's like that high touch, like that communication, that reassurance isn't something that you're going to get from either an app or from, a coach who might have all the certifications in the world, but like doesn't have that communication with their athlete. So, okay. So moving on, I wanted to ask you again, putting on your coach hat, like what are some of the common pitfalls you see in training or big mistakes that you see athletes make, either when they are working with a coach or when they're not working with a coach?
The first one is easy days too fast. That's like, honestly, if I could fix one thing in running that like just suddenly people weren't able to do because I said so, it would be running their easy days too fast. I just think the upside you get from pushing higher end, let's say zone 2, higher end heart rate, higher end e-pace, whatever language you want to use, the upside you get is not worth the potential downside of missed time, increased peripheral fatigue, injury risk, etc. When the margin of what you gain from going like upper end zone 1, low end zone 2 to
Mm-hmm.
upper end, zone 2 is like minimal at best for what you get in terms of aerobic benefits, but the risk far outweighs it. And so I think, to give an example, it's like pace is like almost absolutely useless when we look at all these trail people that are running like friggin' 8-minute kilometers going up mountains and crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a lot of them are super, super fast. Like you see some of these American guys that are running 210s, 212s,
Mm-hmm.
and their pace, if you look at all their stuff on the friggin', mountain goat climbing that they're doing, is like 8-minute Ks or, 10-minute miles, 11-minute miles. It's like, okay, well, maybe they're getting fast on fast. Okay, so how are they getting fast, right? It's like, oh, they're doing a lot of low zone aerobic work that has a big decrease in peripheral load in terms of ground reaction forces and the load that's coming back up, right? Probably
Mm-hmm.
they're on softer surfaces, so I would argue that helps too. Um, but if you think about it that way, it's like, okay, well, why are they able to go out there for like 5 hours in a mountain and like ripped? It's like because they're doing it a lot easier, right? Oh, okay. Well, if we know that the central idea of running is that you need to do more to get better, okay, well, how do we get you to do more? You could just rip out the door really fast, or you
Mm-hmm.
could slow it down and you could do more over more days, right? And the
Yeah.
body just cares about stress and time. It doesn't care about pace, right? So
Yeah.
I think that would be the biggest thing, like have people slow down. I use like I literally, my athletes are listening to this. Some of them will have seen this. I will screenshot, and Knobs and I talked about this when I had him on, where
Yeah.
I will screenshot his training. I did this last week for somebody when I was talking about easy runs. It's like Thomas just ran 63:28 or something like that in the half up in Toronto at the start of his build,
Mm-hmm.
and I sent them his entire week. So he averaged like basically 454, 455 miles, 302 Ks or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And his normal easy run pace every day is over 5 minute Ks or 8 minute miles.
Yeah.
I was like, if this guy who's trying to run, 210, 211, 212 this year can benefit from going 8 minute miles, like me, the guy who's like trying to get back in shape and is maybe in 17:45, 18 minute shape, is probably going to be okay running 8:30 miles. Like I could probably slow down even more, right? And so I think that's the big one for people is like just slow down, right?
Yeah.
And I think we all want to like prove, right? So I think you hate this saying that I have, but I think it's funny where it's like you don't you can't pull their carrots up and see if they're ready and put them back in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you do hate that one. And so,
I'm used to it.
yeah,
It's a Brantism.
Brandon, I still want to Steve. But it, it's true, right? And I think we all try to do that on our easy runs to be like, okay, I'm fit, or okay, like I made this mistake. Here's a good lesson. I did this for years because I knew all the Daniels paces and everything. And I was like, okay, well, if I want to run, 16 minutes when I was trying to break 16 minutes, it's like, well, that E pace is this and that 5K pace is this. So I would run
Mm-hmm.
all my workouts to those paces to try and prove that I'm in that shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned over the years is if you just do the inverse of that and you run on appropriate efforts and such, you'll get there way faster and safer. Like if I look back at my entire career, it was plagued by getting to like 10 to 14 days before a race and blowing up with an injury and or illness because I was
Mm-hmm.
pushing so hard all the time to try and prove that I was in that fitness. And so I just didn't enjoy training or didn't enjoy racing. So I took a long time off. One, because I was massively injured. Two, because I wasn't enjoying it. And so I would say that's the biggest pitfall is just running your easy days too fast. There's like almost zero benefit
Mm-hmm.
and reward with like maximal destruction possible.
Well, and something like I read or I see or what have you, it's like, well, I only have this amount of time, so I need to maximize my training. I need to maximize my run. And
Sure.
I'm like, it's not the way it works. Like,
Well, I
yeah.
would move to educate on that. I would go, okay, if you want to maximize your time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which time are you talking about? Are you talking about today's time, this week's time,
Mm-hmm.
this month's time, this build's time, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're trying to maximize today's time, but it's at the expense of this week's time because you're too sore to run or you're
Mm-hmm.
injured, or this month's time because you're not consistent, are you really maximizing your time?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the answer is probably no, right? So the other thing to think about is what is best in the long term is always going to be best in the short and the medium term as well, right? Nobody runs their best marathon in their first go,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like most of our athletes are marathoners, so I'm picking on that. And so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, if that's not going to be your best one, then we automatically have to consider what is right for you in the
Mm-hmm.
long term to get you to your best marathon, which means we have to set the groundwork now in the beginning to set you up to be able to be in the sport for the long term to see what your potential is.
And I remember a couple of years ago, something that you said to me, and that's a whole other side conversation, but it was like, at best, you don't achieve your full potential or you don't realize your full potential. And at worst, you run the risk of injury. And I'm sure we've seen it with some of our athletes. It's like knowing when to not only push, but knowing when to hold back and when to pull back. And yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah, it's true. Like that's part of the job, and that's why I always say you have to coach the person, not the spreadsheet, right? So like Thomas doesn't mind when I share him as examples, but you know, earlier in his career, I had to hold him back. And there's still times where I do have to hold him back. But I
Mm-hmm.
know that for him as a person, and him and I have such good relationship and communication that he can
Yeah.
tell me how he's feeling. And we both know it's him just trying to get his feelings out because he is literally striving to do the best possible for him. Right.
Yeah.
And so if I was just coaching a spreadsheet because he wants to run 211, I'd be like, well, no, the workout says this, or like, that's fine. Right. And because I coach him as a person and not a spreadsheet, we have trust going back and forth where it's like, I trust and I listen to what he says because he knows
Yeah.
himself very well, right? But
Yeah.
he also trusts me when I go, that's not the idea here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
try to do that with all my athletes, right? I just use him as an example, but it makes a big difference when you do that because if athletes from the onset know that I care about them being in the sport for as long as possible to
Mm-hmm.
explore how good they can be, then it's much easier to trust, right? That what I'm saying here is the best possible scenario. Like, here's the other thing. It's like, even if I purely wanted to think about it from a business perspective, it would be garbage for me to hold people back, right? Because people are like, oh, he's not helping me get fast. It's like that would be a horrible business model if I only cared about business, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't stand the test of reason in multiple domains. And so I think if we can just get people to slow down, and I've had numerous examples of this where I've got a woman down in Mass who I slowed down and she finally broke 3 for the first time. I think it was like her 15th or 16th marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that was the big piece to it. It was like slow down so you're not destroyed all the time. You have better workouts, you feel better, you're
Mm-hmm.
more consistent. So I don't know. I've probably beat this dead horse long enough, but hopefully that comes through.
Something else that I've seen on my side of things when coaching is, I always say to my athletes, like, life happens, shit happens, right? So sometimes they have to push a workout, sometimes they have to miss a run or what have you. And what I share with them is like, usually one run is not going to make or break your build. But, and on one hand, it's coming from a good place when an athlete's like, oh my gosh, I missed this run. Like, I have to make it up. And they either double up the next day or
Mm,
tack that time onto another run. And I'm like, you've never done a double before in your life. Why do we think that this was a good idea? Or their normal 60-minute run now becomes a 90 to 100-minute run, which is approaching the length of their long run. And I'm like, so that's one of the pitfalls that I see is, people trying to make up time or make up for something, and, not reaching out to their coach when they've missed the run and only after they've done the thing. So how have you maybe approached that from an education standpoint with your athletes if you've seen it happen?
yeah, I'm gonna test this example here. It could be complete trash. I haven't put it outward yet, but as you
Mm-hmm.
know, I like to give examples, and my athletes know this. So
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other night. I was at my nephew's birthday party, and we were doing math. He loves math. He just turned
Yeah.
3. Yeah, you don't even know this yet, but this is literally a fresh example. It could be horrible. And so I was thinking about this idea of like making up or like trying to do it. And so I was thinking because he's really good at math and he's learning numbers and he's doing his multiplication and addition and stuff. And I was like, okay, so if we were teaching him math and we're teaching him like numbers 1 through 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he skipped 3 and he couldn't get 3, right? Would we go back and then like lessen up 4 and 3 on the same time, right? No, we'd either like stay with it or we'd like teach him 4 and we'd come back to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the same sense, we wouldn't assume that we failed or successful at math just because we missed 3,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like one number doesn't mean he's illiterate at math just because he doesn't get it, right? Like if he can still do 10 times 10, which he can, which is brilliant, right?
Yeah.
He's pretty good at math, right? And so one run, just like one number when you're learning math, doesn't mean that you're failed, and it doesn't mean you have to like make it up and like double learn 4 the next day, right? It's like you can't
Mm-hmm.
do that, right? And so I think, I don't know, maybe it's a crap example. People can call me out if it's horrible. I don't know. I have bad ones sometimes, but I think that's really the way I want to think about it is like you didn't fail because you missed one. Life happened, or for some reason, right? Like maybe his like language isn't good and he can't say 3. I don't know, like whatever. There's
Mm-hmm.
a reason he missed it, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, what can I learn from why I missed it? Maybe I didn't schedule my day right, or maybe it was
Yeah.
my kid was sick and horrible. Okay, well, nothing we can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if missing one run is the determining factor of whether you're successful in your marathon or not, we have big
Yeah.
problem, right?
Yeah.
And so, like in the same way that like if you teach math or the alphabet or something like that, right? It's like you need all of it, right? And so you have to
Mhm.
keep doing it. It's a system in terms of how we teach those things. It's a system that helps get you good at the marathon or whatever race you're training for, right? But
Mhm.
you can take one piece out and the whole thing doesn't fail. Like you can still learn how to spell or do math if you can't figure out three, right? Or
Yeah.
B, right? And so I think that's probably the best way I can conceive it, at least now. I don't know. It could be garbage. We'll find out.
Yeah, and I think something you maybe said in other words earlier on the podcast was that like just because you can do something one time, if you're not if you don't have that repeatability, so hey, maybe you got away with running the double that one day because you missed the run, or you tacked it on and you ran 90 minutes. But if that's not doesn't have the consistency and repeatability, and then it sets you up for failure or to go into your long run under recovered, fatigued, sore, whatever. That's kind of I think what we're probably both also looking at is like you can get away with things once, but how does it impact the rest of the week, the rest of the build, what have you?
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Hmm.
Right, is a great way to kind
Yeah.
of live when I think about training. And so, yeah, okay, maybe you can, right? Oh, maybe you got away with it for a week, right? But at the end of the day, I don't care if you get away with something for a week or a couple days or whatever. It's like at the end of the day, I need you to be consistent.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yes, pick Rory. Rory can run 3 great marathons in a year, right?
Hmm.
I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, but maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't, right? But just
Yeah.
because Rory can doesn't mean you should, right? Like,
Hmm.
and the tricky part I have to remember all the time, and I have to bring myself back to this when I'm talking to people, is like, I need to first ask what their goals are, right? So I come at it from the bias that I want people to explore their potential to see how good they can be, right?
Yeah.
Some people, and it's not a critique, just don't care about that,
Hmm.
right? Some people just want to be part of running and do it. And that is totally okay, right?
Hmm.
But we have to be on the same page for that. Because if I come
Yeah.
at it with my priority that I want people to be as good as possible, I'm going to be an ass when it comes to that, right? And some people
Yeah.
are like, hey, I just love the atmosphere. I love the community. It's so great for me and I want to do it. Perfect. There is a bit of a mix, right? Because you don't want, like, I would present it as like, got you, understood. I'm taking that in now for you. But I also don't want to see you injured and burnt out from something that you love so much, right? So it's a bit of a
Hmm.
double-edged sword in that way. But I think again, I go back to the idea of like what is better for you in the long term is still great for you in the short and medium term.
Something else I wanted to talk about on this common pitfalls that we see in training, because I know we've talked about it offline and stuff, is intensity distribution.
Oh yeah,
And I
that's a
give
good one.
this one example. Oh my God, it's so good. I give this one example. This is probably going back a year, 2 years ago. I had a new athlete reach out, was looking to be coached by me. And I was like, okay, like, what does your training look like right now? Just to get a general sense, how many days a week are you running? What's your average weekly volume? Kind of what's your familiarity with different, like, sort of workouts? And this person said to me, okay, I do a tempo session on Tuesday, I do a medium long run on Wednesday, and I do hill sprints on Thursday. And I'm just like, there are 7 days in the week. And those are three, fairly intense or big things stacked back to back to back days. So, on that note, intensity distribution, what do you see? How do you, again, educate your athletes, or how do you approach coaching or planning out a training block for an athlete?
Yeah, it depends on the athlete and who they are, and like I always try to assess what's going to work from an education perspective with athletes. Like some people just want to
Mm-hmm.
just hear it, like they like that authoritative approach, right? They just like, hey, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I didn't know and it's your style, so we'll do it this way, kind of thing. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's other athletes you have to like reason with and understand their logic is an emotional thing. Like, do they have a belief that they have to do this, right? So sometimes you have
Mm-hmm.
to dispel the belief, right? In a nice way, obviously. And others like they want the education, they want the why, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have some like slide decks that I have from when I used to do coaching certification where I have pictures that I just pull up and I'll show them. And like one of them is this like graph of VO2 max, and it's like the percentage of VO2 max gains that's get from high intensity work is like this, and the percent from base work is like this. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the sign. I didn't just like draw this graph like
Yeah.
on PowerPoint or something. And so I'll use all of those kind of approaches depending on the person, but I would say broadly, most people overdo how much intensity they most people overthink how much intensity they actually need to do and underthink how much aerobic base work they need to do. Now,
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say, like, this is where we get things wrong, like publicly or public culture in terms of running, where we go like 80-20 or zone 5 or hit training or whatever. It's like, I've seen plans from literally some of the top people in Canada and some of the top people in the US in terms of what they've done leading up to the Olympics and Olympic Games.
Mm-hmm.
not a single one of them goes, oh, I was 81% on my zone 2 stuff this week, or
Yeah.
22% on my higher than zone 2 stuff, or looks at it and goes like, I don't think I did enough hit training, right? And so I'm not picking on any of those methodologies. They have their place and they have their timing, but rather that good coaching is the science of blending all of that and the art of making it happen to the person. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you do that, like, first question is like, okay, what are the gaps this person is trying to close, right? Okay, what is their experience with the types of training you could do to close that gap? Are they a high responder or a low responder to certain domains, right? So as an
Mm-hmm.
example for you, your gap was you'd never run before. So it's like, okay, well, let's just
It's a
start
pretty
with
big
running.
gap.
And so as we slowly discovered, you had an aptitude both like emotionally and cognitively and physically to doing higher volume. And you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do the marathon and nothing else. So it was like, okay, that's what we're going to work towards, right? But even in your later builds, after we had kind of, I wouldn't say maximized volume, but we had started like pushing the volume, it was like, okay, well, we can't just keep doing volume now, right? Hence why we went back to the 10K and the half in the spring, right? And so it's not about 80-20 or hit or, pick X, Y, whatever training methodology you want. It's about doing the right thing to close the gaps for the right person, right? So for some
Mm-hmm.
people and during some seasons of training, that intensity distribution is going to be very different. If I'm training a miler, right, to try and run in the 330s for 1500, their intensity distribution is very different than the marathoner when they're
Mm-hmm.
in competitive season. Now, a miler is still going to be go running anywhere from 60 to 100 miles a week out of season. That's why most of the milers do cross country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they build the base. So it's not a like we have this reductionist approach. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox here, but I'm going to keep going. We have this reductionist approach that when we look at like what the last couple workouts are or the last phase was, is that that's what was successful in getting them there. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
that's what sharpened the spear. But like you want a really good spear before you sharpen it, right? Otherwise, it's
Mm-hmm.
useless, right? You want it made of the right materials and the right weight. And so you have to be able to step back and look at that person's build over like the last year or two. Like race results aren't made in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks. They're made in the
Yeah.
preceding 6 to 8 months, and then they're
Mm-hmm.
topped up, right? So I would look at it that way and go, okay, the intensity distribution that's required to peak and perform at a very high level is very different than what's required to get you to that high level. And so that's the
Mm-hmm.
mix of good coaching, is being able to look at it and go, okay, that's what's needed here. But in order to get to the place to be able to utilize all this fancy stuff towards the end or intensity towards the end, you have to build
Mm-hmm.
the capacity to be able to do it. So like I talk about intensity discipline all the time, like as it pertains to easy runs, as it pertains to tempo workouts in particular. I got a video coming out next week, or well, it'll probably be out before this one is, but
Yeah.
about distribution for tempo stuff and how you don't want to go over the lactate curve. Like anytime you go over your
Yeah.
LT2, you actually lose the benefit of the workout. And fun
Mm-hmm.
story to pick on you, we had this conversation I think 2 summers ago when I said you're running your tempo runs too fast and you didn't think so. And I said, could you do it for like 50 minutes? And you said, I think so. And so the next
Okay,
week I
wait,
made
can we pause
yeah,
and tell that story? Because I think it's
yeah, go ahead.
actually hilarious. And
Yeah.
for anyone that doesn't know me, but I know I say this a lot to my athletes, I think the people that we run and train with know I'm a very big effort based runner. I know my paces, like I know my pace ranges for easy pace, marathon pace, tempo pace, but it's always balanced by what does the effort feel like today. And we know that in the summer in Kingston or southeastern Ontario, it's hot and it's humid and your effort drastically increases. So to preface the story, it was 2 summers ago, as you said, pretty hot, pretty humid. I was out doing some tempo workouts and I knew that based on the heat adjusted pace, I was probably maybe running too quick, but the effort felt right. And I was like, okay, I didn't run the pace, but it felt like tempo effort. And I come home after that workout, my tail's a little bit between my legs, and I'm like he's gonna kill me because I didn't execute the workout the way that he had said. And so, sorry, now you can go now that the
Yeah, no,
background's there.
I think I think I also said to you that conversation, like, yes, I might be your partner, but I also have to be like, this is the time for where I'm your coach, right? And you trusted me with your
Yeah.
goals, so here's my feedback. And
Mm-hmm.
so you said that, and you were like, no, like to your credit, you were like, no, I think that's about right. And I said, fine. Do you think you can do it for 50 minutes? And you were like, I think so. So I said, okay, next week you're doing it for 50 minutes. And we went on this
50
1,500 meter
minute
loop.
tempo.
Yeah, 5-0. We went on this 1,500-meter loop, and I was on the bike watching your effort every time, and I was like, God damn it, she was right. And so it
And we were
reminds me of
talking the whole
the
time.
whole time. Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
people were jumping in there. And so it reminds me of this. You haven't seen this movie, but like hardcore runner people from my era and before would have, like Without Limits about Steve Prefontaine. And
Mm-hmm.
he's battling his coach in the similar regard that you were. And Prefontaine says to Bill Bowerman, played by Donald Sutherland in that movie, and he goes, "Hey, Bill, do you think there's such a thing as overcoaching?" And Bill goes, "Yeah, and I'm against it." And so I remember thinking about that quote when you did that workout, and it was like, okay, I was overcoaching in that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
so, even, somebody's experience as me, like sometimes I just go, okay, sometimes the athlete actually does know, and I have to trust that, right? But I still
Mm-hmm.
stand by my position where it's like, okay, like we're going to check in on this because as a coach, you've trusted me with your goals. It's my job to ensure that we're doing the right things, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
obviously with you, it's a little bit easier because I see you every day. I understand your training and your, load in terms of how you're feeling and such, but and I can be out there for workouts as much as I can. And so
Mm-hmm.
I can do that a little bit more than I can with some of my virtual online athletes. But
Mm-hmm.
it is true. Like you can overcoach a little bit, but yeah, to your credit, you had the intensity, discipline, and distribution correct. Yeah, there you go.
So I've stolen a couple answers here recently. I asked you what are the common
Okay.
pitfalls you see, and we talked about easy days too fast, people trying to maximize their training or intensity distribution. Are there any other big pitfalls that you see pretty commonly, or that you would like to address now that you have this platform and you can share?
I would say wanting it all too quickly or stacking too many races in a season. Those would be the two. So, like, you know, everybody knows the quote, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? We say
Yeah.
this in sport in terms of seasons, like outside of running, it's super cliche and such, right? But like, what that actually means is like, you have to do the right things for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's why it's a great metaphor. Yeah, it's a metaphor. It doesn't use like or as, so it's a metaphor. So that's why it's a great metaphor, is because like if you actually embody that and do it, you will be successful, right? But it's also a hard thing to do. And so another saying I like to use and live by is like, oftentimes the hardest thing to do is the right thing to do, right? And so it's easy to be like, hey, shiny object, there's a race this weekend, I could do it, right? The
Mm-hmm.
hard thing to do is to go, I should stick to my training and get better. Like training is where you get better, not racing, straight up. Unless you're really like middle distance, pointy end, where like I think in the 800, if you look at the top Olympians, they race on average 8 to 9 times in a season, plus
Mm-hmm.
indoor season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So different problem there. Also remember, like they're also running for, on the guy's side, a minute and 44 seconds on average, and on the women's side, a minute and 57 seconds on average. Like that's a completely different race than you or I racing a 5K, 10K, or marathon, right? So
Yeah.
the hardest thing to do is the right thing to do. And so, like, we have to just stop being, is it crows that like shiny objects? Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
Crows, ravens, one of them, I don't know. Whatever it is, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
we can't get into the shiny object syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And I see too many people, oh, this race or this workout or that group run or that group workout kind of thing. And then they just lose the plot. And then all of a sudden, their original pursuit of trying to see how fast they can be is just about doing all the cool things. And hey, like I said
Mm-hmm.
earlier, if that's what you want to do and that's what you're in the sport for, I love it. I love that
Mm-hmm.
for you, right? But I think it doesn't allow you to see your potential. And so if your goal is not to chase how good you can be, and full respect, that's a hard pursuit and some people don't want to do it, totally happy for you. And I will coach you to
Mm-hmm.
that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
just you can't have both.
Yeah. Are there any other ones that you wanted to mention before moving on to potentially our last question, unless there's other things that we want to chat about?
I would say forgetting why it is you got into running and what you love about it. It's very easy to get stuck into the culture of like getting all your stars or racing this big race or the social media side of it and such. But maybe I'm out of touch with like the new runners that are social media and run club stuff. Maybe I am. I don't know. But I would say a lot of us didn't get into running for those things. We got into it for our health, or we enjoyed it, or time
Mm-hmm.
away from humans and being in our own brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and oftentimes I see runners kind of forget that, right? And it is a bit of a balance in that like pursuit of excellence, where
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just do need that little bit of space where you're not chasing things, and that's totally okay. Um, But I think always being able to go back to like a why do I run? Why do I enjoy run? Like to steal from yoga, like they talk about their yoga practice, right? So
Mm-hmm.
why do you what does your running practice mean to you, right? Why do you
Mm-hmm.
do it, right? You
Yeah.
know more about yoga than I do. I'm super inflexible and literally I've only gone with you, but um, I would look at it that way. I think that's a big pitfall because it's so easy to get caught up in Strava, what everybody else is doing, and social media and run clubs and all that junk. But yeah, for most people, just go back to why you do it. Like I do that now. Like I mean, I barely compete anymore, and like
Mm-hmm.
pretty much every day I'm doing something, whether it's run, bike. I
Yeah.
still, Steve still coaches me. I'm doing workouts and stuff. I've been injured in the 4 years we've been together. I think I've been injured for whatever 4 times 12 is 48, probably 47 of those months I would say I've been injured, and I still get up every day and try to do stuff. So
Yeah.
um, you know so I would say everybody should do the same.
Yeah. So a second ago, you mentioned the pursuit of excellence.
Hmm.
So I wanted to ask you again, as someone who has coached at a very high level, who has coached every single person from age groupers to Boston Marathon qualifiers to NCAA champions and everywhere in between, right? What are some of your most memorable moments in coaching?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think there's so many and for different reasons, and I think I'll try and do a list. I used to do this like blog. I can't write very well, but I somehow attempted it, and I used to do this like monthly kind of like shout out and then like a yearly like performance reflection in terms of like top 10 performances of the year and stuff. So I'll try
Mm-hmm.
and pull for some of that. I apologize to any former athletes who are listening if I miss you, but I think these will be in no particular order.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to preface it with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. This is not a ranking. This is not an all-time ranking kind of thing.
It's
But
what comes to
uh,
mind.
what
Yeah.
comes to mind? Yeah. So I would say a couple years at Queens that were really cool. So I'll lump that together as one. I would say like the first year both our teams medaled at OUAs. Watching Julianne Stolly really take off in her second, third, fourth, and fifth year, and what she did and what she brought to the program and what she taught me about coaching. Alex Wilkie, like what he did was incredible, and coming back from surgery and the team stuff that he navigated and worked through. Like he had a labral tear surgery and was out for a year and still came back. Like he I can't remember the exact number, but he either ran like a 402 or 403 mile indoors. So his leg would basically
Wow.
stop working. He ran it at Boston. He ran that basically with like on one leg. It was incredible. One of the craziest things I've ever done or ever seen done, I should say. So that was really cool. A great person, great family. Um, Claire Sumner coming out of nowhere and winning National Cross as a senior was super cool to see. She'd won U Sports that year up in Quebec City and then won on the home course. There's this really cool photo for anybody in Kingston, Clive Morgan. There's a really cool photo of, I think it's actually, the photo is Wilkie high-fiving Clive actually, but Claire coming across the line and Steve and Clive are there. I think I wasn't a part of it, but Julianne qualifying for the Olympics in 2021 was super cool to see. She was like my first rookie at Queens, and Steve coached her to the Olympic Games before she moved to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Getting to work with Kieran Lum ahead of 2021, him winning U Sports, setting the Canadian record indoors for U23, 745, 3K was really cool. Um, just like the way he approached the sport and who he was as a person was like amazing to watch. Um, Seeing like that's the closest I've ever coached somebody in the Olympics. I think we ended up, I think, 7 or 8 seconds shy in the 5,000, so less than a second per lap. In 2021, he was also like 22 at the time, which is like insane. And he subsequently went on to make the Olympics under his former coaches, Powell at University of Washington, where he did grad school. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but seeing the way he approached it and being that close and probably not even recognizing in the moment what it is that we were trying to accomplish and how crazy it was that we were doing it. Um, and doing it during like the COVID lockdowns with all these like different restrictions and stuff was insane. And just his grace in how when he didn't do it, like what that actually, changed for him and his hunger. Not that he wasn't hungry before for it, but that was pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool. My junior group, the PK iteration of the junior group that I coached for 8, 9 years there was like seminal in my understanding of coaching and development and such, and very fortunate to work with so many amazing athletes. I think when I look back, I think it was like 9 years, 10 years, maybe 11 years. I can't remember off the top of my head, but didn't miss an officer cross country or track medal for a single, like ever, across that time span, which is like unheard of for a town our size. And I want to be clear, that wasn't my brilliance. That was the athletes who, dedicated. And we had this amazing like belief effect in Kingston at one time. Like I was coaching elementary, high school in Queens, and Steve was coaching Queens and post collegiate, and I was doing a little bit of post collegiate at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And so everybody could just look up and be like, I want to be that person. Okay, well, how did they get there? Right. So there was this
Mm-hmm.
amazing belief effect. And I've been very fortunate to have some lifelong friends from the like family members and athletes that I coach from that. So those would be really cool. And then I think some of the stuff Thomas has done, like with the story, and those who haven't or don't know can listen to the podcast episode I did with him. But to see just how far he's come and from some of the bottom of the sport and do that. And then I think also like more personally, some of the like group trips that our local group has done. Like, we had a big year in Boston and a big year in Chicago, like some of the pictures where we've got like 30, 40 people that we train with all at, Boston together and such. And so I would say those have been really, really cool. Your 246, because of the context of it, I would say it was really cool. Like 2 weeks before, basically crying after bombing, like your last kind of workout race thing in Picton. That was pretty cool just to see kind of how happy you were and like how you didn't even know you broke my PR, but we'll talk about that later, I suppose. So yeah, I don't know. I'm probably missing a bunch. Like I'm very, very
Mm-hmm.
fortunate. I say this all the time that I've been around a lot of really cool things. Some of the like years where the PK senior women were crushing it, and there was like other women from other training groups coming to Kingston to like all work together, literally work together, just so everybody could be better. That was really cool to see some of the things that sport could do. Some of the national team stuff was really fun to be on some of those cross country teams and watch athletes have big breakthroughs and do that stuff. But I don't know. There's a lot. Like I said, no order. I'm probably forgetting a
Yeah.
bunch. Oh, maybe Anna winning off injury in the 800 or 1500 rather in Guelph in 2019. That was really cool to see her do that. Mackenzie make her first national team, coming out of being a 100, 200 meter runner in grade 9 to making
Mm-hmm.
Pan Am cross country in her grade 12 year. Kicking it in like in the last literally like 300 meters, took the last spot to make the Pan Am team. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. Yeah, no, I could probably list a bunch more, but those would be like the performance ones. And then if you allow me to take a side tangent, I would say
Yeah.
so much about like when I don't think about it often, but when I look back at kind of those 10, 12, 13, 14 years that I was in university, high school, and post collegiate kind of high performance arms, was just like the memories and trips that we did. Like I'm so fortunate. I got to go to like a bazillion states and different countries and do all these things and just really meet and hang out with a lot of cool people, like the athletes and coaches and such, and just learn and watch the way athletes handle themselves, the way they take care of it, the cool memories and inside jokes from different teams and trips and such. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, I think very blessed and fortunate to have been able to do what I did. And now I get to share it with everybody, which is super cool. That's like the part I love now. Honestly, I'm so
Yeah.
enthralled with being able to take everything I've learned and make it accessible to everyone. Like even this podcast and the social media side as an extension is like athletes that I coach now are like, you have a lot to share. You should share it. That's where this like came from. I was like, I don't like friggin' social media. Like I hate it. I hate posting. I don't do it, all that stuff. But it came from athletes pushing me to go like, hey, you should share some of this stuff. It'd be really helpful because it's impacted them. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm just enthralled with the ability to be able to help, more and more athletes and keep people on the right side and showing like how beautiful and lovely and brilliant this sport can be and what it can do for us. Because I know, through multiple iterations and eras of my life, it's given me so much. So it's cool to see it give so much to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. We've covered a lot today, and we started talking about the mentorship piece and how coaches get into things, the pitfalls we see, obviously these memorable moments. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to make sure you got to chat about or mention, or it can always be saved for another episode, but if you did want to add anything to our conversation today?
Yeah, I don't know. I was gonna say there's probably lots of topics we can talk about. I mean, people can tell us if they like this style or if
Mm-hmm.
they want other topics. Because I can talk all day. It's literally my job. But
Mm-hmm.
um, No, I just think like I hope what comes through for people is that like this sport's really special, and if you love it and care about it, and you really want to do cool things, you absolutely can. You
Mhm.
got to have the right people in your corner, be it your coaches, family, support systems, whatever it is. Um, and I just think building yourself up for success takes a village, like they always say, right? And so I am very fortunate and happy to be in so many people's villages to help them and do it. But I think there's a couple ideas that I'm floating around for some of the longer form, like educational style ones that I do from the training paces. So I'll probably do some of those. But yeah, if this does well and people like it, I'm happy for sitting down and getting peppered with questions for whatever people want to know. So I
Yeah,
can't always wait.
maybe I'll have to be the host again and come up with a
Yeah,
big
go for
list
it.
of questions.
Yeah, I don't mind. No, it's fun. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, this has been awesome. And as you said, we're very fortunate. You're literally upstairs right now. I'm downstairs. We can do these whenever we want. We don't have to overly plan it out or schedule it. So, yeah, I'm sure this is just the first of many conversations that we'll have.
Yeah, so if people actually like this is what I'm told I have to say. I hate it. I think it's the cringiest thing. I literally hate social media and this stuff, but I'm told I have to do this. If you do like this stuff and you do like this style, like, comment, follow, subscribe, all those crazy
And if
words.
you want me to be the host more than Brant, let me know too, because this is my first
Yeah,
time ever being the host or the interviewer
sorry.
of a podcast. So,
Yeah, if you like Elaina hosting better than me, I will gladly step off the mic. She can do it. Let us know. But in all sense, like if there is stuff you liked or you want certain things or more things, we are happy to
Mhm.
do this. She's
Yeah.
more happy than I am. I do it because I love helping people, and this is an extension to do that. But um, yeah, let us know. Like, follow, subscribe,
Yeah. And
whatever else we can do on these things.
this is really just an extension of like the conversations we have every single day over breakfast, over dinner. Like we are both talking about running and training and coaching every single day. So it's just what we do every day anyways, just without a microphone in front of us.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks for hosting, Elaina.